The wedding bells were still ringing in the distance, but for Maya, they sounded like a funeral march. She tripped over the heavy silk of her white dress, the lace ripping against the jagged rocks of the forest. Tears tracked through the thick makeup on her face, and her breath came in short, terrified gasps. Just an hour ago, she had been standing at the altar. Now she was running for her life. Underneath her white glove, her hand was throbbing. Her husband-to-be, Thomas, had shown his true face in the dressing room. When she found the ledger proving his family's crimes, he hadn't apologized, he had laughed. He told her she was just a pretty bird in a gold cage, and then he had slammed her against the wall to show her who the master was. "Find her!" a voice roared from the trees behind her. It was Thomas. "I don't care if she's in a wedding dress. Shoot to kill!" Maya burst out of the woods and onto the dark, rain-slicked highway. She fell to her knees, her white dress turning a muddy gray in the puddles. The world was spinning. She saw two bright lights cutting through the fog. A massive black SUV was screaming toward her. She didn't move. She couldn't. She simply closed her eyes and waited for the impact. The SUV didn't hit her. It drifted sideways, tires screeching like a dying animal, and stopped only inches from her face. The door opened, and a man stepped out into the rain. He was a giant of a man, dressed in a black suit that cost more than Maya's entire wedding. A dark tattoo of a weeping willow started at his neck and disappeared into his shirt. His eyes weren't kind. They were the color of a cold, stormy sea. This was Silas Vane, a man the city whispered about in fear, the man who ruled the underworld with an iron fist. He looked at Maya's ruined dress, then at the red bruise blooming on her cheek. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't offer a hand. He simply pulled a heavy silver handgun from his belt and pointed it at the woods where Thomas's men were emerging. "Please," Maya choked out, her voice a tiny thread. "Help me." Silas didn't look at her. He fired 3 shots into the dark, and the screaming in the woods stopped instantly. He turned his head slightly, his jawline as sharp as a blade. "Get in the car, little bird," Silas said. His voice was a low, terrifying growl. "Today is the day your husband dies, and your real life begins." Maya scrambled into the passenger seat. As they sped away into the night, she saw her own reflection in the window. She was covered in mud and blood, but for the first time in years, she wasn't alone. She was with a monster, but he was a monster who had just saved her. Why did the most powerful mafia boss in the city stop for a girl in a wedding dress? As they reach his mansion, Maya realizes Silas didn't pick her up by accident. He has been waiting for this wedding for 10 years. Before the story takes a darker turn, I just want to say thank you to everyone supporting this channel. Your likes, your time, your presence here, it means everything. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now would be the perfect moment, because what's coming next? You don't want to miss it. The black SUV glided through the city like a shark in dark water. Maya sat huddled in the passenger seat, her ruined wedding dress a mountain of stained lace around her. She kept her eyes on Silas Vane's hands. They were huge, scarred, and steady on the steering wheel. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a storm that had decided to stop moving for a moment. "Why?" Maya finally whispered. The word felt like a stone in her throat. "Why did you stop for me?" Silas didn't turn his head. His profile was sharp against the passing streetlights. "I didn't stop for you, little bird. I stopped for what you were carrying. My men saw you leave the estate with a black leather book tucked under your arm, the Bryce family ledger." Maya stiffened. She hadn't even realized she was still clutching it. The book was small, but it contained enough secrets to send her husband and his father to prison for 100 years. "I'm not giving it to you," she said, her voice trembling but brave. It's the only thing that keeps me alive. If I give it away, I'm just a witness they can kill." Silas pulled the car into a hidden underground garage beneath a massive glass skyscraper. He killed the engine, and the silence that followed was heavy and cold. He turned toward her, his electric blue eyes pinning her to the seat. "You're wrong," Silas said. His voice was a low, dangerous rumble. "As long as you have that book, you are a target. Thomas Bryce has already put a price on your head. By morning, every hitman in this city will be looking for a girl in a white dress." He leaned closer. Maya could smell expensive wood smoke and rain on his skin. He reached out and grabbed the edge of her silk veil, ripping it away from her hair with one quick motion. "I've been waiting for a reason to tear the Bryce Empire down for 10 years. They killed my brother to keep those secrets. You want revenge? I can give it to you. I can turn you from a victim into a ghost, but it comes with a price." "What price?" asked Maya, her heart hammering. "Total obedience," Silas replied. "You stay where I tell you. You speak when I tell you. And when the time is right, you will stand in front of a judge and tell the truth. In exchange, I will make sure Thomas Bryce never touches a hair on your head again. I will be your wall. I will be your weapon." Maya looked at the dark tattoo of the weeping willow on his neck. She knew she was making a deal with a different kind of monster, but as she looked at the red bruise on her wrist from Thomas's grip, she knew she couldn't go back. "Deal," she whispered. Silas nodded once. He stepped out of the car and opened her door. He didn't offer a hand, but he stood between her and the shadows of the garage, a silent tattooed shield. "Step 1, Silas said, looking at her dress. "Burn that white rag. From now on, you only wear black." Silas takes Maya to a room filled with monitors. On the screen, she sees her own funeral being planned by her husband, even though she's still alive. But then, she sees something in the footage that makes her realize Silas has a secret connection to her mother. Silas led Maya through a set of double steel doors into a room that looked like the brain of the city. Wall-to-wall monitors flickered with blue light, showing street corners, docks, and the private driveway of the Bryce estate. "Sit," Silas commanded, pointing to a black leather chair. Maya sat, her hands clutching a spare black hoodie Silas had thrown at her. On the largest screen, she saw her husband, Thomas. He wasn't crying or searching for her. He was sitting in his study, calmly drinking whiskey while two men in dark suits stood at attention. "They think you're dead, Maya," Silas said, leaning against the desk. "Thomas told the police you fell off the cliff during the wedding reception. He's already planning a memorial for next week. He's using your death to get sympathy votes for his father's election." Maya felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "He's erasing me," she whispered, "like I never existed." "That's his mistake. He thinks the game is over. He doesn't know you have the ledger." Silas tapped a key on the keyboard and the screen changed. It showed an old, grainy video from 10 years ago. It was a security feed from a hospital parking lot. Maya gasped. She saw a younger version of her mother walking toward a car. A man in a dark hoodie approached her, handing her a small silver object before disappearing into the shadows. "That was the night she died," Maya said, her voice trembling. "Who was that man?" Silas stepped into the light of the monitor. The blue glow made his features look like sharp marble. "That was me," he said quietly. "Your mother wasn't just a socialite, Maya. She was an accountant for my father. When the Bryces tried to take over our territory, she was the one who hid the evidence of their crimes. She gave me the key to the vault that night. She told me to protect it until someone brave enough came to claim it." Maya looked from the screen to the man standing beside her. The Mafia boss wasn't just a stranger who picked her up. He was the guardian of her mother's last secret. She knew this would happen, Maya realized, a tear finally escaping and hitting the black fabric of her sleeve. He knew the Bryces were monsters, Silas agreed. He turned to a side table and picked up a professional-grade tactical knife, sliding it into a sheath. Now, look at the bottom corner of the screen. Maya looked. In the live feed of the Bryce estate, a man was walking toward the garden shed. He was carrying a white dress, her wedding dress. He threw it into a metal barrel and lit a match. "They are burning your past," Silas said, his eyes turning to cold fire. "So tomorrow, we start building your future. And in your new life, you aren't the girl who runs, you're the one who hunts." Silas begins Maya's transformation, but the first lesson isn't how to fight, it's how to lie. He takes her to a high society auction where Thomas is a guest. Maya has to stand inches away from her widower husband without screaming. Will she break cover? The grand ballroom of the Sapphire Hotel was a sea of gold silk and expensive champagne. Under the glittering chandeliers, the city's elite gathered for the annual Angels Gala. In the center of the room, Thomas Bryce stood with a black band of mourning on his arm, accepting condolences for his tragic loss. Maya watched him through a pair of dark designer sunglasses. She wasn't the girl in the ruined white lace anymore. She wore a backless black silk dress that fit like a second skin, and her hair was pinned back in a short professional bun. Beside her, Silas Vane looked every bit the billionaire, his tattoos hidden beneath a custom charcoal suit. "Keep your chin up," Silas murmured, his hand resting firmly on the small of her back. "If you look down, you look like a victim. If you look at them, you look like an owner." "He's laughing," Maya whispered, her knuckles turning white as she gripped her clutch bag. "He killed me in the eyes of the law, and now he's laughing about it." "He's not laughing at you, Maya. He's laughing at his own luck," Silas said, his blue eyes scanning the room like a hawk. "He thinks he got away with it. People are most vulnerable when they think they've already won." As they moved through the crowd, Thomas turned and saw them. He didn't recognize Maya behind the glasses and the expensive glow of Silas's protection, but he recognized Silas. A flicker of fear crossed Thomas's face before he masked it with a fake politician smile. "Vane," Thomas said, stepping forward. "I didn't think you did charity events." "I don't," Silas replied, his voice a cold, terrifying rasp. "I only come to things I plan on buying, and tonight the price of everything in this room just went up." Thomas looked at the woman on Silas's arm. He squinted, a look of confused recognition starting to dawn in his eyes. "And who is your lovely guest? She looks familiar." Maya felt her heart stop. The smell of Thomas's cologne, the same scent he wore when he hit her, filled her nose. She wanted to scream, she wanted to run, but she felt Silas's fingers tighten slightly on her waist, a silent reminder of her training. Maya took a step forward, leaning into Thomas's personal space. She tilted her glasses down just enough for him to see her eyes, cold, hard, and very much alive. "I'm the ghost of Christmas future, Thomas," Maya whispered, her voice smooth and dangerous, "and I think you're standing in my light." Thomas turned pale, his champagne glass trembling. Before he could speak, Silas spun Maya away, disappearing back into the crowd. "You did well," Silas said as they reached the elevator. "But the hunt is only beginning. He knows you're alive now. He'll send everything he has to finish the job." "Good," Maya said, a dark smile touching her lips. "I want him to see me coming." Thomas sends a team of professional kidnappers to Silas's penthouse, but he doesn't realize the building is a giant trap. As Maya fights for her life in the dark, she discovers that Silas has been keeping her mother's real cause of death a secret. The penthouse was a cage of glass and steel, hovering 40 stories above the city. Inside, the lights were dimmed to a soft blue. Maya stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the rain streak against the glass like tears. She was practicing the weight of the pistol Silas had given her, feeling the cold metal become an extension of her own hand. "He's here," Silas said, his voice cutting through the silence. He didn't look up from his tablet, which showed 3 black vans pulling into the private alleyway below. Thomas didn't just send his men, he hired the Vipers. They don't take prisoners. "What do we do?" Maya asked. Her heart was racing, but her hands stayed steady. "We don't do anything," Silas said, standing up and shedding his suit jacket, his white shirt stretched across his broad, tattooed shoulders. "We let them in. This building is a labyrinth, and I am the Minotaur. You stay in the reinforced safe room behind the kitchen." "No," Maya said, her voice firm. "I'm done hiding in rooms while men decide my fate. I want to see him fail." Silas looked at her for a long moment. A spark of respect flashed in his cold eyes. "Fine, but you follow my lead. If I say move, you move." Suddenly, the power cut out. The penthouse plunged into total darkness. The only sound was the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of heavy boots hitting the roof. Silas moved like a ghost. He didn't use a flashlight. He used the infrared sensors in his vision. He pulled Maya into the shadows of the hallway just as the glass balcony doors shattered. 4 men in tactical gear burst in, their red laser sights dancing across the walls. Silas didn't fire a gun. He moved with a blade, a silent blur of motion that took down the first 2 men before they could even scream. Maya watched, horrified and fascinated, as the Mafia boss dismantled the professional killers with the grace of a dancer and the brutality of a monster. In the chaos, a small device fell from one of the attackers' belts. It was a recording device playing a looped message from Thomas. "Finish the girl, just like we finished her mother. No survivors this time." "No survivors?" Maya whispered. "The police report said my mother died in a solo crash. It said she was alone." Silas pinned the last attacker against the wall, his knife at the man's throat. He looked back at Maya, his face splattered with a drop of blood. "She wasn't alone, Maya. Your mother was carrying a second ledger, one that proved the senator was working with the cartels. They didn't just crash her car, they ran her off the road and watched it burn." "You knew?" Maya gasped, the betrayal stinging more than the fear. "You knew they murdered her and you didn't tell me?" "I didn't tell you because I needed you focused," Silas growled, turning back to his prisoner. "But now you know. They didn't just break your marriage, Maya. They stole your soul. Now do you want to cry about it, or do you want to help me finish this?" Maya finds a hidden file in the attacker's gear that reveals a shocking truth. Thomas isn't the one in charge. The real mastermind is someone Maya has known her entire life, someone she trusted more than her own mother. Who is the third shadow? The silence in the penthouse was broken only by the hum of the backup generators. Maya sat at the marble kitchen island, staring at the small, cracked tablet she had pulled from the tactical vest of the fallen attacker. Her fingers moved across the screen, bypassing the simple encryption codes Silas had taught her. "What are you looking for, Maya?" Silas asked. He was cleaning a long silver blade with a piece of dark cloth, his movements methodical and calm. "The money," Maya whispered. "If Thomas hired the Vipers, he had to pay them from a secret account. The ledger I have shows the family's old money, but it doesn't show their current payroll." She tapped a final icon, and a list of encrypted transfers appeared. Her heart skipped a beat. The payments weren't coming from Thomas. They weren't coming from the senator. They were coming from a private foundation called the Silver Lily. The color drained from Maya's face. The Silver Lily. That was my mother's favorite flower. But that foundation isn't run by the Bryces. Who runs it? Silas asked, his eyes narrowing. Arthur, Maya breathed. My father's best friend. He's the one who walked me down the aisle when my father was too sick to attend. He's the one who told me Thomas was a good man from a stable family. He's been my advisor for 10 years. Silas dropped the cloth and walked over to her. He looked at the screen, his face hardening into a mask of cold fury. Arthur isn't just an advisor. He's the bridge. He's the one who helps the Bryces wash their dirty money through charity. And if he's the one paying the Vipers, it means he's the one who ordered the hit on your mother. Maya felt like the floor had vanished beneath her. The man who had held her hand at her mother's funeral was the man who had paid to have her car run off the road. He's at the manor right now, Maya said, her voice turning from a tremble to a cold, sharp edge. They think they've won. They think I'm dead or hiding. They're half right, Silas said. He reached over and picked up a heavy tactical belt, strapping it on. You're not hiding anymore. We're going to the manor, but we aren't going as guests. What's the plan? Maya asked, standing up and grabbing her own jacket. Silas looked at her, and for the first time, he gave her a small, predatory nod of approval. We use the distraction of your memorial dinner. While the city's elite are crying over your empty casket, we are going to show them exactly what a ghost looks like. Maya and Silas infiltrate the memorial service, but they aren't looking for Thomas. They trap Arthur in the very nursery where Maya used to hide. As the truth comes out, Maya realizes her mother didn't just leave a ledger, she left a recorded message that changes everything. The Bryce Manor was draped in black silk and hypocrisy. Hundreds of guests in expensive suits stood on the lawn, holding candles for a woman they had never truly known. Inside, the grieving widower, Thomas, was shaking hands and soaking up the cameras, while Arthur stood by his side like a loyal shadow. Maya and Silas didn't use the front door. They moved through the service tunnels, dressed in the uniforms of the catering staff. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she walked past the kitchen where she had once been cornered, but Silas's hand on her shoulder was a cold, steady reminder of her mission. Arthur just went upstairs, Silas whispered into his earpiece. He's heading to the nursery to check the wall safe. He thinks the second ledger is there. He's wrong, Maya said, her voice like ice. The ledger isn't there, but I am. She slipped away from Silas, moving up the back staircase with the silence of a cat. She entered the nursery, a room filled with plastic-covered furniture and the smell of dust. A moment later, the door opened and Arthur stepped in. He looked older, his face lined with the stress of the last few days. He headed straight for a hidden panel behind a painting of a carousel. "It's not there, Arthur," Maya said, stepping out from behind a heavy curtain. Arthur spun around, his face turning a ghostly shade of gray. He lunged for the door, but it clicked shut. Silas was standing on the other side, locking it. "Maya!" gasped Arthur, his hands shaking. You're alive? We thought the Vipers—" "You thought the men you paid murdered me," Maya corrected, stepping into the moonlight. "Just like you paid them to murder my mother. Why, Arthur? She trusted you. I trusted you." Arthur fell back against the wall, his eyes darting around the room for an exit. "You don't understand, Maya. The Bryces, they have everyone in their pocket. If I didn't help them, they would have destroyed my family too. I did it to survive." "No," Silas's voice boomed from the shadows as he stepped into the room. "You did it for the 10% cut you took from every cartel shipment. We checked the Silver Lily accounts, Arthur. You weren't a victim. You were the architect." Maya pulled a small silver digital recorder from her pocket. It was the one she had found hidden inside her mother's old locket. She pressed play. A woman's voice filled the room, soft, shaky, but clear. "Arthur, if you are hearing this, it means I am gone. I know what you did. I know about the bridge payments. I've hidden the real truth in the one place you'll never look, the public record of the Silver Lily. Maya, if you find this, run to Silas Vane. He's the only one who can help you finish what I started." Arthur collapsed to his knees. "Please, Maya, don't do this. Thomas will kill me if he knows I lost the evidence." "Thomas isn't going to kill you," Maya said, looking down at the man who had been like a father to her. "The law is, and Silas is going to make sure you live long enough to tell them everything." Outside, the sound of police sirens began to drown out the funeral music. The police arrive, but they aren't there to arrest Thomas. The commissioner, still on the Bryce payroll, orders his men to shoot on sight anyone inside the manor. How does Silas use the funeral cameras to broadcast the truth to the entire world in real time? The nursery door shook under the weight of a battering ram. Outside, the hallway was crawling with men in tactical gear, but they weren't wearing police badges. They were the private security force of the Bryce family, led by a commissioner who had long ago traded his soul for a seat at the senator's table. "Open the door, Vane," the commissioner's voice boomed. "We have a warrant for your arrest for the kidnapping of Maya Bryce. Come out with your hands up or we open fire." Silas didn't look at the door. He was hunched over a laptop he had pulled from his tactical bag, his fingers flying across the keys. A dark tattoo of a raven on his hand seemed to pulse with every movement. "They aren't here to arrest us, Maya," Silas said, his voice a calm, deadly hum. "They're here to make sure the ghost disappears for good. They've already cut the live feeds to the local news stations." "Then we're trapped," Maya said, clutching the silver recorder. "No," Silas replied, a cold smile tugging at his scar. "They cut the news feeds, but they didn't cut the funeral stream. There are 10,000 people watching the memorial of Maya Bryce on the internet right now, and I just hijacked the signal." Silas hit the enter key. In the garden below, the giant LED screens that had been showing a slideshow of Maya's childhood suddenly flickered. The music stopped. Across the world, every person watching the live stream saw the same thing, the interior of the nursery. They saw Arthur on his knees, crying. They saw Maya, alive and breathing, and they heard the voice of her mother playing from the recorder, naming every bribe and every murder. "What have you done?" Arthur shrieked, staring at the camera lens hidden in Silas's lapel. "I've made you famous, Arthur," Silas said. Outside, the battering ram swung again, splintering the wood. "Breach! Breach!" "Down!" Silas yelled, throwing his body over Maya as the door exploded. Flashbangs turned the room into a blinding white void. Silas rolled, firing his weapon with mechanical precision, taking out the lights and the first two men through the door. The room was plunged into a nightmare of red laser sights and muzzle flashes. Through the chaos, Maya saw Thomas Bryce standing in the hallway, a look of pure, animalistic rage on his face. He wasn't a politician anymore. He was a monster whose cage had been opened. He drew a chrome pistol and aimed it directly at Maya's head. "If I can't own you, no one will!" Thomas screamed over the noise. He pulled the trigger. Silas takes the bullet meant for Maya, but he doesn't fall. As the world watches the live-streamed massacre, a secret ally within the Bryce family pulls a lever that changes the entire game. Who is the fourth shadow, and why have they been waiting for this moment since Maya was born? The sound of the gunshot was a deafening crack that seemed to stop time. Maya flinched, waiting for the cold sting of lead, but it never came. Instead, she felt a massive weight slam into her, knocking her back against the nursery wall. Silas had thrown himself in front of her. He didn't scream, he didn't even groan. He simply grunted as the bullet tore through his shoulder, his blood hot and crimson as it splattered onto the white lace of the ruined rocking chair. He stayed upright, his blue eyes turning into chips of ice. He raised his own weapon and fired a single calculated shot. The gun flew out of Thomas's hand, and the man fell back into the hallway, howling in pain. "Silas!" Maya cried, reaching for him. "Stay down," Silas growled, his voice rasping but firm. He pressed his back against the wall, blood soaking through his black tactical vest. "We are done yet." Outside, the commissioner's men were hesitating. They knew the cameras were rolling. They knew the world was watching the massacre in real time. The memorial had become a televised execution, and the public was screaming for justice on every social media platform. Suddenly, a new voice echoed through the hallway, not through a megaphone, but through the manor's own intercom system. "Cease fire," the voice commanded. It was cold, elegant, and filled with a power that made even the commissioner freeze. "This ends now." A woman stepped through the smoke of the hallway. She was tall, dressed in a sharp gray suit, with hair as silver as a blade. It was Thomas's wife, Evelyn. She wasn't looking at her wounded son. She was looking at Maya. "Mother!" Thomas gasped, clutching his shattered hand. "Kill them! Kill them both!" Evelyn didn't even blink. She walked past him and stood in the doorway of the nursery. She held a small black flash drive in her hand. "My husband is a fool," Evelyn said, her voice echoing in the silent room. "He thought he could build an empire on the bodies of women and children. He forgot that I was the one who built the foundations of this family. I was the one who mentored Maya's mother, and I was the one who gave her the ledger in the first place." Maya stared at her, stunned. You were the fourth shadow?" "I've been waiting for 10 years for a girl brave enough to burn this house down," Evelyn said, a ghostly smile touching her lips. "I couldn't do it from the inside. I needed a spark. You, Maya, are the wildfire." Evelyn turned to the commissioner, who was standing awkwardly with his rifle lowered. "Drop your weapons. The FBI is at the gates, and I have just sent them the decryption keys for every offshore account this family owns. If you want to keep your pensions, you'll start arresting the men in this hallway." The commissioner didn't hesitate. He turned his weapon on Thomas. Thomas is in chains, but the danger isn't over. As the manor burns, Silas and Maya have one final choice to make. Does Maya go back to her old life with her new fortune, or does she join Silas in the shadows to become the new queen of the underworld? The Bryce Manor was no longer a house, it was a funeral pyre. Orange flames licked the black silk curtains, and the smell of expensive perfumes was replaced by the stinging scent of wood smoke and melting plastic. Outside, the night was filled with the blue and red strobe lights of 100 police cars. Silas leaned heavily against the nursery doorframe, his face pale from blood loss. He looked at the chaos, the commissioner being handcuffed, Thomas screaming as he was dragged toward a van, and Evelyn Bryce standing calmly in the garden, watching her legacy burn. "It's over, Maya," Silas said, his voice a dry rasp. "The FBI has the drive. The accounts are frozen. You're the richest woman in the city now, and the cleanest." Maya stood in the center of the room, the silver recorder still clutched in her hand. She looked at her reflection in a cracked mirror. She wasn't the girl who had fled her wedding in tears. Her black dress was torn, her skin was smudged with soot, and her eyes were hard as flint. "I don't want the money, Silas," she said, turning to him. "The Bryce name is poison. I want it buried." "Then take the trust funds and go. Go to Europe. Change your name. Start a life where no one knows what a ledger is. You earned your freedom tonight." He began to walk toward the back stairs, his movements slow and pained. He was heading back to the shadows, back to the silent world of the Vane Syndicate. He didn't ask her to follow. He didn't even look back. Maya watched his broad, tattooed shoulders disappear into the smoke. She thought about the perfect life Thomas had promised her, a life of silence and cages. Then she thought about the last week, the cold metal of a gun, the rush of the hunt, and the man who had bled to keep her standing. "Silas!" Maya called out. He stopped, his hand on the railing. He turned his head just enough for her to see the sharp line of his jaw. "Maya, you told me once that the shadows are lonely, and you told me that a wedding dress was a good camouflage for a killer. Well, I'm done with the dress, and I'm done being alone." Silas stared at her, his electric blue eyes searching hers. "If you come with me, Maya, there is no turning back. The law won't protect you in my world. You won't be a citizen. You'll be a ghost." Maya reached out and took his hand, the one with the raven tattoo. She squeezed it, her grip firm and unafraid. "I've already been a ghost, Silas. Now I want to be the one who haunts the monsters." A small, genuine smile, the first one she had ever seen, broke across Silas's face. He pulled her close, his good arm wrapping around her waist as the roof of the manor groaned and collapsed behind them. "Then welcome home, little bird. The city is ours now." As the sun began to rise over the smoking ruins of the Bryce Empire, two figures emerged from the tree line and vanished into a waiting black SUV. The world looked for Maya Bryce for years, but they never found her. They only heard whispers of a new power in the underworld, a woman in black who sat beside a man with a weeping willow tattoo, ruling the city with a ledger in one hand and a blade in the other.